mainly baseball and basketball. My father had been a basketball player for Iowa State University when he was going to veterinary school. And so he always had a 30 by 30 basketball court for us that he would build in the backyard. We lived in two different houses over the years in Little Preston, Iowa, town of 1,000. And so we had a basketball court and played sports all year round. And then one day, my brother, I was in 8th grade, and they started high school track at our small high school, and he brought a shot home. And when I saw it, I was intrigued to pick it up and throw it. And then, and I've told this story before, of course, but I was immediately struck by the thought of what if I throw it again and try to throw it farther than the first time? And that kind of went on for the next 21 years. It was that intrigue, even though I was pretty, I did well in baseball and basketball, and as the years went on, the coaches would say, oh man, some of the local old timers would say, I think that they'd tell my dad, that I think Al has a chance to make it to the big leagues, or the football coach would say, you could play on any college team in the state right now. We're going to go around and get you scholarships. And all the while I was thinking, I think in my mind, I would say, I would kind of reject that and think about shot putting. But anyway, to get back to that question, because I'm kind of belaboring it, but, after throwing the shot a couple times, I went and I grabbed a weight plate, a 5-pound weight plate. I didn't know anything about discus throwing, and I started throwing it like a discus. Yeah. And I was the only kid in town that had a weightlifting set at that time, back in the early 1960s. I guess my brother Gary bringing that shot home, was... and I think the fact that I did enjoy lifting weights and strength would lend itself to why I chose shot putting, more of a strength event.
Yeah, and was that, I guess, like you said, was it sort of mid-60s that, people didn't really tend to sort of, athletes specifically didn't tend to lift weights as much, I suppose, because of the kind of stigma around being muscle bound and that it impacted athletic performance. So I guess you're kind of ahead of your time, really, in some ways.
Exactly, just in the sense that I rejected that, because people did talk about weight training making you muscle bound in those days, and I remember that. But no, I rejected all of that, and I used to drive 20 miles to the nearest big town that had a magazine store, and I started buying Strength and Health magazine and any other magazine that might have an article about a thrower. And it also got me really interested in weightlifting, Olympic-style weightlifting.
And that's you did pretty well in that as well, didn't you? I think you did. You competed alongside the shot in that, didn't you? So.
What was that one more time?
Sorry, I was just saying that I think the Olympic weightlifting side, was that on par with the shot put? Which did you prefer, the shot, and you just kind of did the Olympic lifting, and then fell into wanting to start competing in that as well?
Yeah, I'm not. I'm almost not sure, which love, which passion came first, because I think what I found out, because I was really intrigued by weightlifting, by Olympic lifting. I don't know how that happened exactly, why I chose that over bench pressing or, whatever. But, I knew there was a sport called weightlifting, and I loved the idea that you knew how much weight was on the bar before you ever lifted it, if it was a lifetime record or not. And, but pretty quickly I found out that there were way more opportunities in shot putting on the high school track team, which I joined the next year, and started having certain amount of success, or I don't know if I'd call it success. I made constant improvement, because of my efforts.
Yeah.
And focus.
And were you programming your training then, or was it kind of, you just did, which lifts that you enjoyed, and then, you go throw as much as you could, or was it kind of, did you start developing your own plans at that stage?
Well, so I played, again, I was a pretty good baseball player, and I was a pretty good basketball player, and then when we added football my junior year, I was a pretty good football player, and I enjoyed all those team sports. But what I would do is after basketball practice, even in the wintertime in the snow, I would go home, turn on the outside light of the basketball court, and my dad had built a toe board in his wood shop off the edge of the concrete basketball court, and I would put the shot out in the snow in the evening. Now, the coaches didn't know that, and they wouldn't have liked it. But that's what I did, and basically in all the sports I played, almost from the very beginning, shot putting was always foremost in my mind or in the back of my mind. And after I'd get done practicing whatever sport I was in, I'd go throw the shot. And I was always lifting weights. Yes, we used to go home at lunchtime. I only lived a block or two from the school, and one or two of the farm kids would come down to my house with me, and we'd do deadlifts in my basement. So, just as a fun thing to do during lunch hour. Yeah,
that's good. I think it tends to be. I think nowadays, there's such a big gym culture, I guess, and I guess back then it would have been quite not a strange thing to do, but it just you'd have been quite unique to have done that, and I guess it was kind of a fun thing to do, isn't it? When you're young and nobody else is doing it, it makes it kind of rebellious in a certain way.
Yeah, no, exactly. It was, and that's an interesting question, because, why do some people get intrigued, even though there's not a whole lot of support? My coaches weren't really supporting that part of it, except during track and field season in the spring. And, they weren't sharing the same passion that I had. And but that was fine, because I was self-motivated, to focus on shot putting and weightlifting as well.
Yeah, and I think that's the important thing, I guess, isn't it? Because both of those things can be quite a lonely sport in the sense that you have to motivate yourself, because no one's going to help you lift that weight or throw the shot. It comes from yourself. So I guess that for you, that's where it started from.
Yeah, definitely. No, you're absolutely right. And I mean, I think about that to this day. If people ask me suggestions about, some young guy that's throwing in the area, and anyway, it's basically always about, are they self-motivated? Because I don't have a lot of faith in forcing someone to throw.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
Anyway,
I think that's the thing with a lot of sport, isn't it? That you see, you see on TV, young kids that are being pushed into sport, and they're really having to be sort of, I think it comes from the parents as well sometimes, that they really sort of drill it into their kids that they need to do well in this sport, but ultimately it comes from the personal passion, and some people just don't have that drive in sports, and that's because their attention's elsewhere. But yeah, it's quite interesting. Yeah, it's I guess even
absolutely. Yeah.
And I guess when you went to Emporia State, didn't you? That was your university.
Yeah, I went to Emporia State. I wasn't very large. I threw 60 feet 9.5 in high school with a 12-pound shot, which was pretty good.
Yeah.
Back in 1996, and but I only weighed about 180 pounds. And so the big schools, the famous track and field schools, they took one look at me and that was it, he'll never be he'll never fit into our program. He's not big enough to be a shot putter. But the coach at Emporia State, who was a shot putter, saw me at a summer meet in Des Moines, Iowa. And he saw the quickness and, he convinced me to come to Emporia State in Kansas, one state over. And it was probably the perfect place for me to go at that time. They had a very active track and field program. They went to all the big meets. And my size, didn't matter. It was an NAIA school, which is small colleges. And I ended up winning the national championships my freshman year, 56 2.5 with a 16-pound shot. And so it was a pretty good improvement in 1 year.
Yeah, that's good. And that was that Phil Dullivan? I think I saw you mention in one of your previous interviews.
Yes, Phil Dullivan, yeah.
And he wasn't he sort of similar size to you, so I guess he kind of understood the mechanics of it. Right,
yeah, very much. We had a similar profile, height-wise, and all of that. And, so it was a good fit. It was a good fit to have the head coach of the track team be a shot putter. And, and I threw the discus on occasion, or actually I threw the discus as well. And even javelin or hammer throw, if there were team points, were at stake. Yeah. So.
And your training at the time, was there kind of, again, even when you were at college, was it kind of, was there, by that point, was there any change in kind of the way that you trained, or was it very much kind of self-motivated in terms of what you did outside of the shot ring?
Yeah, it was still very self-motivated, but the difference was that I had teammates that had also been recruited to be throwers, and so there might be a discus thrower from New York or from Boston, or there was one of my teammates was a discus thrower from Des Moines, Iowa, from my home state. And so you had training partners. Yeah. And so that was the main difference, is that motivation was a little easier to find because you had people to train with and lift with. And my own ideas about it just began developing, It was when I got a shoulder injury throwing in the sleet in Arkansas, at the Arkansas Relays. I won the meet, but it had been like 30 degrees, freezing, and something happened to my shoulder. So I decided that I was going to just go all out on full squats. And for about 2 weeks, for some reason, I gained enough strength in just that time that it improved my overall shot putting once I could throw again. And so those were the sort of things that started developing, is, changing the routine, improving the routine. Yeah.
And when you were at college, was there kind of again, similar question, but was there kind of a push for the athletes to have the right nutrition, or was it very much kind of still kind of quite, I don't know what the right word is, but yeah, was there any sort of onus on that at all?
Well, the closest thing to nutrition from the coaching point of view was when I arrived. I think the coach thought I was bigger than I was. Right. And when he saw me, he went, "Oh my God." And he rushed out and bought a case of something called Nutriment, which was like an early kind of a protein liquid drink. And but to answer your question about nutrition, I became interested in nutrition when I was 13 or 14 years old. And so I was already ordering protein powder and desiccated liver tablets, and I even ate fish from the sea, which I think was just dried fish ground up into tablets,
right.
And it was really hard to consume. But and I even, there was a promotion at Bob Hoffman's company, the Strength and Health people. They promoted that you could sell your own products, and I actually got my dad to contribute some money, and I ordered a huge supply of products to sell. And when I started having success as a freshman, winning all my meets, all the other team members started buying whatever I had. They didn't care what it was.
Yeah.
They almost like a like a superstition. Like, oh my God, I've got to have whatever his products are. I didn't keep selling products, but I probably should have.
Yeah, yeah, that's it. I mean, if you look at athletes today, that's just constant. It's constant things that they're selling, isn't it? Like protein powders, pre-workouts, anything that people will buy, they'll sell. So. Yeah. But it's true. I mean, everybody looks up to, an athlete or a football player or whatever it is, and even though it doesn't really it won't do anything different, because they're doing it, you do it. So that's interesting.
Right. But I was a believer, and I always was, from an early age. So.
Yeah. And then
I felt some of the products, like liver tablets, they seem to really have an effect, at least in my mind,
Yeah.
and I seem to feel a physical effect. So
yeah,
that's part of the game, is feeling positive about the things you're doing.
Definitely, yeah. It makes a huge difference, doesn't it? I mean, and on that point, I mean, what were the meets like, when you're at college? Was it kind of traveling all across the US, or was it kind of local meets? And did you meet with some of your sort of future, colleagues or competitors?
Yes. I mean, the fact that we went, even though we were an NAIA school, we went to some of the big meets. Kansas, Texas, and Drake relays were all sort of national class. They were all very national class competitions, and people like Randy Matson were throwing in meets like that. So I was in the freshman division. I won the freshman division at those meets in my freshman year, but I was around people like, I would see people like Randy Matson, the world record holder.
Yeah.
And then as like a sophomore or a junior, there were people like Carl Salb, who he was also, he was a great high school shot putter, and he was certainly, and he was going to Kansas University right down the road. And so there was all this competition right nearby.
Right.
And I couldn't beat him at that time, but it was something I could look up to challenge me. I was quoted in the Kansas City Star once, because they had 3 great shot putters that swept the NCAAs a number of years in a row. And I said, I think I can beat 2 of the 3 Kansas shot putters. And so before the meet, it was in Oklahoma City, the 3rd best of them, Doug Knopp, came over and he said, Al, that was really stupid what you said. He said, you're never, he said, you might beat me, but you're never going to beat Willie or Carl. And that was Steve Wilhelm or Carl Salb. And I did beat 2 of them that night. And by that summer, my senior summer, actually the year after college, I did beat Carl Salb not for the first time, but in the Pan American Games, where I took gold and he took silver. So, yeah, I think it was good to be around those better throwers. We did go to meets that had the top guys in them. Yeah.
Yeah. And was it clear? Did it become clear to you at that point that you started beating some of these guys that were kind of big names at the time? Was it clear that you had an edge and that this was sort of going somewhere, or were you very much still kind of grounded and just sort of going with the flow of it all?
Yeah, actually, to that point, one of the most important things that happened in my entire throwing career was, well, first of all, let me say, the day I graduated from college, I got in my car to drive to California. I stopped at the NAIA National Championships in Billings, Montana, and won with a new NAIA record. Slept in my car in Yellowstone National Park along the road. Stayed in a little shady hotel in Barstow out in the desert, and then drove into Los Angeles. And I only knew one person there, and that was an Iowa shot putter named Doug Lane, who had thrown over 70 feet in high school, and he invited me to come to California. I've been here ever since.
Wow.
But so that was 1970, right after college, and I improved immediately in the sunshine and the atmosphere, and I was throwing for the Southern California Striders initially, and I placed third in the national championships in Bakersfield in that first couple months in California. Randy Matson said he didn't want to go on the national team tour to Europe, and so Steve Wilhelm and I were the two members. We were both pretty well unknown at the time. I'd thrown 65 feet, a lifetime record, at the meet in Bakersfield, right, the national championships. But it was competing against the French in Paris, the Germans in Stuttgart, and the Soviets in Leningrad. I placed fourth out of four against the French. I placed third out of four against the Germans, and I placed second in the meet in Leningrad. And by the time I left that tour, the most important thought came over me that I can beat all these guys. And so I went back to California with just this tremendous passion to improve, because I figured if I could out-train people every day over time, that I could beat everybody.
Yeah.
And so anyway, I came back with a very important lesson from that trip, that these weren't unbeatable people.
Did you see kind of, how they trained? Because I guess competing against the Soviets and the East Germans, I'm imagining, or the West Germans, did you see kind of the edge that they have? And I guess you probably didn't get much of a chance to speak to them because of the regulations, but was there anything that you saw at that point where you thought, I need to go back to the US and try and implement this? Or was it very much just the motivation itself was enough?
Yeah, it was really just the motivation that here I am. I just, left the Midwest. I just left, I grew up in a small town in Iowa, and all of a sudden I'm in Paris and Stuttgart and Leningrad, and for the first time, and I'm seeing that in this world, against these national teams, I just knew that I could beat these people.
Yeah.
And the one funny story is against the French. They had a 42-year-old shot putter named Pierre Colnard, and he had been in the French Indochina War when the French were in Vietnam before the Americans. And the first thing he did is he came over, and of course he spoke French only, but he grabbed my hand and he made me feel the bullets that were still in his body, wow, lodged in his body.
Yeah.
He had a bullet in his arm and he had a bullet in his knee. And it was kind of a funny moment.
Yeah, yeah, I bet. Yeah, it's a bit of a shock, I guess.
Yeah.
And so when
but no, that was a real turning point for me. And then by the next January or February, I set a world indoor record in the shot. Training in Los Angeles at the time.
Yeah.
and near USC. I'd been in a meet, the Sunkiss meet was one of the first meets of the year, and all of a sudden I'm throwing, and Randy Masson's there, and Randy Masson's in great shape, and he'd announced that he was going all out, and so I'm still an unknown. Al Feuerbach is still not a name in shot putting. Even though I'd been on that USA team, I was still an unknown. And at the Sunkiss meet, when they announced Randy Masson's name, they trilled the R. He was like and I just never forgot that.
Yeah.
And in the meet, he tied the world indoor record, and I had 2 throws, 1.5 inches less. And I got somebody called me over from the stands, Rosie Greer. He was an actor, and he'd been an NFL football player, and he said, "Man, you were tremendous." But that's the only credit I got that night.
Wow.
And so to have 2 throws, 1.5 inches less than Masson, and he's just accepting it as, well, I tied the world indoor record. I seethed. I couldn't let that go 24 hours a day for the entire next week. And when we got to the San Francisco Cow Palace, the Examiner Games, I exploded. I threw 68.11, over 21 meters, and set a new world indoor record.
Wow.
And all of a sudden, I was not unknown.
Yeah. Was that really
the meet?
Go on.
Yeah, that was the meet that where I did become known, I guess.
Yeah. And what was the kind of attention at that point? Was it drawing big crowds, and were people aware of what was going on in the throwing world?
Well, so the throwing world was about to explode, but in track and field, it was fantastic. That night in the Cow Palace, it was a sellout crowd. There was media from all over the world, mainly because Jim Ryan, the miler, was going to make a comeback race that night. But the shot put stole the show. They had to even hold up the mile, delay the start of the race. And it was definitely, it became the key event. And all of a sudden, shot putting, because of this new guy, myself, and competing against Matson, because he was an attraction already. It was the beginning of some very exciting years in shot putting. With George Woods, and then Brian Oldfield, and I remember that arenas all over North America, all across Canada, all across the U.S., every indoor meet was sold out, sold to capacity.
Wow.
So, yeah, it was, and shot putting became one of the main events at most of these meets for the next few years.
Wow. And I guess that's kind of testament to the sort of upset, in a way, I guess, of having somebody like Matson who was so dominant, and then there was younger guys like yourself and like you say, Brian Oldfield coming along and kind of upsetting the apple cart almost. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I remember there was a famous U.S. announcer who they had a show called Wide World of Sports, and the night after I broke the world record, the night I broke the world record, he announced that I'm trying to remember the quote. That's right.
But he said he may have long hair, but tonight he broke the world record. And the long hair in those days was kind of like the Beatles when they first arrived on the scene, and the hair might have been barely over their ears, maybe not. Anyway, It wasn't long hair, but I remember that's the way I was described.
Yeah.
And so I became known as a free spirit from the beginning.
And was that because of you kind of your personality, or just because outside of throwing as well, were you kind of a more sort of relaxed guy? I guess being in LA at that time, it was kind of quite commonplace, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, everything, I remember everything was just natural. I didn't really think about it. I started letting my hair grow in California. But it wasn't like anything I was concocting or planning. And then I had to start wearing headbands because the hair would, get in the way of my grip on the shot sometimes. And so then that became, I guess that became sort of a signature over time. But it was all, I don't remember, planning any of it. I was just sort of living in the moment.
Yeah. And I guess that's where kind of your sort of legend, I suppose, has come from. It's when athletes like yourself are just very original and just do something different rather than trying to force it. And like you say, being a free spirit, that kind of attracted the crowds, I suppose.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, looking back on it, that's probably the best way to describe it. Yeah.
And at this point, was this before or, around this time? Was it when you were at San Jose, or had you not?
You were a little garbled in just the beginning of that question. What was that?
Sorry, I was just going to say, is that at this point, is that when you were at San Jose?
Okay, so I set that first world indoor record. I was still living in Los Angeles, but the next summer, in 1971, well, later in the same year, I set the world indoor record for the first time and beat Randy Masson for the first time in 1971 in February. That summer, the people I was training with at USC were going to be leaving school, and I met a couple guys from San Jose that were throwers, and they invited me to move to San Jose. So I moved to San Jose on September 1st, 1971, and I lived in a house with Lassen Aka Sam, a Moroccan shot putter, very intelligent guy who eventually set the African continental record, and Richard Marks, who was a shot putter, weightlifter, and another weightlifter. And so then began the San Jose, just an amazing era of, I guess I may have been one of the first athletes to come to San Jose, but there were already people there. Right. Ed Burke was a hammer thrower, the discus thrower John Powell was a San Jose cop, San Jose policeman, and so within a couple of years, I had set the world record in the shot put, and he was the world record holder in the discus at the same time in San Jose. People like Mac Wilkins arrived, Bruce Jenner. It goes on and on. There's so many names. Every once in a while, I try to compile a list, and it's a long list.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Brian. Yeah.
Was there anybody at that time? I know, obviously, later on, you and Mac were close friends, and I'm sure you probably still are. Was there anybody at that point? Was it kind of a friendly community, or was it very much just we're competing against each other, and that's just the way it is?
Well, the San Jose community was it was pretty friendly, and for most of the time. And in fact, when I saw Caitlyn Jenner a couple weeks ago at an event, and we both talked about how wonderful it was at the San Jose Y, where everybody knew everyone else's record, and when you stepped on the lifting platform, the room would get quiet if you were lifting close to your record. And everybody understood that. So there was that kind of respect and camaraderie. But, it didn't last forever. Because when I became really close friends with Mac Wilkins, and I bought this house here in the Santa Cruz Mountains after the Montreal Olympics, I invited him to come up. We were both single at the time. I invited him to live and train here, and he was happy to do that. And so we became kind of a team, and Brian Oldfield kind of hooked up with John Powell. And there were just times when there was some competition going on, and I mean, it got pretty extreme at times.
Really?
You know, Mac Wilkins and John Powell is fairly famous. You know, sparring against one another.
Yeah.
And even Brian Oldfield and I, for a short time, you know, but he'd turned pro, so it was hard. We didn't have head-to-head competitions for a number of years.
Right.
But you know, but in the end, all of these guys were just so great, and so there was just such energy. It was really a magic time.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, that's it. And I think, you know, for being somebody who's a fan of the sport and you know, I'm interested obviously in the history and seeing, you know, the videos from the you know, the meets at that time, and some of the kind of promotional videos that you did and Mac did and John and Brighton. I think that comes out, you know, you can see that there was just something a little bit special then. It was very much kind of, yeah, I don't know how to describe it, but I think, yeah, you can definitely draw that out from seeing it then. So I can only imagine what it was like you know, to actually live in that sort of period.
Yeah, I can't even speak, you know, highly enough about it. You know, I call it somebody else called it Mecca recently. Oh, Wolfgang Schmidt was visiting
right.
A couple weeks ago, and he called it Mecca, and that's what I've always called it.
Yeah,
it was like you know, a very complimentary term. You know, it was the place to be to gain energy off of the other people that were already there, and you know, we encouraged each other all the time, and then even when things got competitive in a you know, sense, it was still good for everybody.
Yeah.
You know, there are throwers like Pete Schmock. He's a 2-time Olympic shot putter. I mean, he was a roommate once. You know, it's like he's not even what you'd call famous, but you know, he was an Olympic shot putter,
yeah.
and all these people were in San Jose.
Yeah.
So
yeah, there's a lot. You know, like you say, I mean, there's a lot of names and a lot of people and a lot of stories, I'm sure. And that's partly, you know, why I'm doing this book, is that, you know, I feel like a lot of that information and stories would be lost, and I think a lot of it maybe already has been. But I think it's important for younger generations to know all this stuff, you know, because it is really interesting. I think it's a story that hasn't been told for quite a while. But yeah, I mean, going back to your time at San Jose, I mean, when you won the gold at the Pan Am Games in 1971, I mean, how did that feel? I guess was that kind of your first sort of big win, or, you know, were there others before that felt as good, or was that kind of the one that?
Well, you know, I think young athletes, you know, you train so hard to end up on a victory stand. I mean, that's sort of the dream. And I remember the first time I was on a big victory stand. I mean, I'd set a state record in the small schools in Iowa, but I don't remember that, you know, moment. But when I won the NAIA championship as a freshman, that was a big moment. And I remember standing on the victory stand and saying, "Is this all there is to it?" And it made me realize that the real joy is in the journey. You know, you've heard that before.
Yeah.
And I couldn't agree with it more. That it's the training, the hopes and the dreams and the training for, and the, you know, the struggle, whatever. So to get to your question, though, the Pan Am Games, so it was a very big and important meet in my life at that time. And still is, of course. And the meet was in Cali, Colombia. Carl Salb was the other shot putter on the USA team, and he was probably in 71. at least equal in ability, and maybe the favorite for the gold. I'm not sure, but I remember, we competed mentally that week leading up to the competition, and I ended up winning the competition, winning the gold medal at the Pan Am Games, and that was a big deal. It was a very proud moment.
Yeah. And did that kind of set you up for, the Olympics? That I think you went to Munich the following year, didn't you, in 72? Were you kind of mentally prepared because you'd gone through, a big competition like that, or was it still very much the Olympics was just kind of separated by, another scale? Was it,
Yeah, I think it was separated by another scale, and the fact that, I had gone over. I became the second 70-foot shot putter in the world in 72 earlier in the season, and then made the Olympic team. And that's probably the greatest struggle of all, is making the USA Olympic team, because Brian Oldfield had come along, Randy Matson was in top shape, George Woods was tremendous, and so there were four of us at least, competing for three spots. I don't think I slept one moment the night before the finals.
Really?
And I don't think so. I don't remember it, but I do remember the adrenaline flowing through the night. But I guess I had just enough left, the next day to make the Olympic team. And so being in the Olympics in Munich, that was really, that was a different scale completely.
Yeah. And how much?
And,
carry on.
Yeah. No, and I was ready for Munich, and the day I arrived, because I'd had a little rest on the airplane, and because I was always overtraining in those days.
Yeah.
But because I knew that hard training yields results, but I hadn't really learned yet that hard training followed by rest yields even better results, and so I threw over what would have won the gold medal without fouling, in practice my first days in Munich, but then continued to train myself down. So that was a little disappointing, to miss a gold medal by 6.5 inches, but especially because it was fifth place and not even silver, or bronze.
Yeah.
But I have no regrets. It's just what happened. So
yeah, and an incredible experience all the same, I can imagine, and I suppose, on a different level, obviously what happened in Munich that year was terrible, for a different reason,
yeah.
And do you think that impacted, the result at all, or were you kind of so focused in that you just kind of tried to shut the outside world out?
Well, yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I did. Is I tried. I knew that all the years that it took to get there, that I wasn't going to let that slip away. That you can't let bad overcome good, and so I tried to shut things out and focus. And so I'll never know how much of an impact that had. The shot was one of those events that was after the incident, and so. I wouldn't say for sure that it had an impact in that I wouldn't blame that, but it was an amazingly tragic event.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I'm sure there was some psychological impact, whether or not you knew it at the time. I mean, I guess these things often come up after an event. So yeah. People had always asked me when they met, like when I'm out working as a sound recorder, if they heard that I was in that Olympics, they wanted to talk about that. And I realized it didn't have the same impact on me. And I wondered what was with that. And I realized it was because I wasn't watching any TV in the village. I was still training. We knew what was going on. I watched the helicopters take off with my own eyes and all that. The Israeli compound wasn't that far away. But I wasn't as impacted probably as someone who was at home listening to television
and being dramatized moment by moment with what was going on. And so it wasn't that I was ever callous. It was just that I didn't have the same images. Now, just a week ago, or just a couple of weeks ago, we went to a movie called September 5th. It was really the perspective of ABC television and what happened in Munich. And I got very emotional watching it. It was amazing. I was really surprised because I recognized everything, the village, the moments. Anyway, that's an aside. But it obviously was a big event.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
So I think the following year. By the way, are you all right for time? I'm just conscious we've been talking for a while.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. No, I'm fine. But what did you say about time? Did you say?
Yeah, I was just saying, if you've got time to carry on. I was just checking that you're all right.
Oh yeah, that's fine.
Brilliant.
Sure.
Brilliant. Okay then. So yeah, obviously the following year, then you came back from Munich in 72. 73, you broke the world record in May 73. Is that right, with 21.82?
Yes, May 5th. Cinco de Mayo.
Right. Memorable date.
My only Spanish. So anyway,
yeah, mine also. And I guess that feeling again was another sort of thing to add to your CV almost, or your resume. In the same day, I think you a couple of hours later, you also broke the national Olympic lifting record.
Yes, in 1973. Let's see. Yeah, no, in 1973, I was second in the U.S. Nationals. I had been to Russia. I had been to Moscow to compete in the Prize of Pravda. I was the only Western male. There were two Canadian 800-meter runner females. We were the only three people from the Western world. And I threw over 70 feet, almost 71 feet, against the Soviets in Prize of Pravda. Traveled back for the U.S. National Weightlifting Championships and placed second, but it was in the super heavyweight class.
Right.
But I weighed in under too light to lift. I had to gain weight to lift in that class. But anyway, so that was 73. I was national champion in shot putting, second in weightlifting. 74, I was national champion in both sports, I think 13 days apart.
Wow.
So in 75, the third time I was going to try, in 75, the competitions were actually 1 day apart. And my goal was to win the national championships in two sports in 2 days. But I had torn something in my rib cage winning the national shot put title in Eugene, Oregon. And so when I got to Los Angeles that night and the next day at the competition, I think I might have made a snatch, but I couldn't. I ended up not being able to do the clean and jerks. It was just, I was tearing something in my rib cage, separating, a ligament or something. Yeah, never diagnosed perfectly, but
you can just
bothered me for a long time.
Yeah. And around this point, how did it work? Were you amateur or were you professional at this stage, or?
Yeah, so when I got to California, I drove to California in my '64 Buick Wildcat, and but it wasn't a Babe car. It wasn't a Babe Magnet. It was a family car, tan, and I immediately started looking for a job through the Southern California Striders originally. I was only with them for a while, only that one season, and then I joined the Pacific Coast Club, which had a lot of world-class athletes. And so they said, well, you could be a bank teller, you could be a security guard, and I was thinking about it. And I had saved up money. I had worked on my dad's farms. He was a veterinarian. and but I worked out on the farms like my other four brothers all did as well over time. But I was getting paid $300 a summer, but I never used any of the money, and so he gave me between $2,000 and $3,000 when I went to Los Angeles, because it was the basically back pay.
Yeah.
And I realized I could survive in those days, certainly for quite a while on that money. Lived very frugally. And then after I set the world indoor record, all of a sudden they wanted to give me per diem, $50 a day for 2 days. And I'm going, wow, they're going to pay me money for something I already love to do. But that quickly turned into, hey, we'd like to have you down in Texas at a big meet to throw against Randy Matson, our Texas guy. And then they would offer like a couple $100 under the table plus per diem.
Yeah.
And so that's the way it then became. I found out that if you get to the very top or near the top enough to possibly draw some people into the stadium, there was this, even in the amateur times, you could live as a starving artist if off the sport. Yeah. It was possible. It wasn't, I probably could have made more money, pumping gas somewhere, but that wasn't what I loved to do. And so, so I lived like a starving artist, in all those early years until about 1977 or so, when I joined a Nike track club, Athletics West, their first track club. And they were more progressive, and this was still the amateur era, but Nike was starting to push the envelope. And so they hired me as a shoe designer, which Mac Wilkins and I and Bob Rogie, a javelin thrower, who, may he rest in peace, they flew us back to their research and development shoe factory on the East Coast in New Hampshire, and we helped design their first throwing shoes.
Wow.
And so then I was getting a legitimate salary, and then they started adding bonus money for meets like Berlin and Zurich and Stockholm, and it was all semi-illegal according to the track rules at the time, but they were really antiquated at that point in time. And of course runners, milers, and sprinters had been making a lot of money all along. Yeah. So, yeah.
Yeah. No, it's interesting because from what I've looked into some of this stuff, and there's not really any information. So that's really interesting actually to hear that. And I didn't realise that you'd worked, on designing the sort of early throwing shoes. That's really interesting. I didn't hear all of that. There was a little crackly, but what were you interested? You were interested in hearing that I had made money doing it? No, just interesting to hear that that's how it works at the time, because it's something that reading articles from the 70s, money wasn't ever spoken about, because obviously you were technically an amateur athlete, but it's just interesting, it's really interesting.
Yeah, it was. It was really interesting, and it's really interesting to look back on it and say that I wouldn't have changed a thing. We all would have liked to have made money, but it wouldn't have made the difference, because we were so passionate about what we were doing that, I call it living like a starving artist. Well, that's a pretty passionate way to live, actually. Yeah. It's not all bad.
No, and freedom is worth more than money, isn't it? So.
Oh my! That's now you're hitting the nail on the head, because I look at the what they have going on now with Diamond League,
Yeah.
And it's really impressive. I mean, and of course the shot putters are fantastic, the distances that people are throwing. And I know they get paid money, but I don't envy that situation. I loved being near the Arctic Circle one day, throwing in a small town in Sweden where, population 5,000 and 10,000 people would show up for the meet. And then you'd be in Athens, Greece the next day, and, maybe go out to some of the islands, and, I would compete up to like 29 times per summer, end up in Edinburgh, Scotland, and they, after the shot put competition, they'd have you put kilts on and have a go at Highland Games. I only did that one time.
Yeah.
Jeff Capes sort of schooled me through that, so that helped.
Yeah. And
of course, he was of course a world class champion at that point in Highland Games.
Yeah. Yeah. And sort of, sorry, I just lost my train of thought there. So in terms of sort of traveling around, is there a meet in that period that, you enjoyed the most, or you look back on and, think that was kind of a really interesting one? Or like you say, I guess all of them were just so unique and interesting, and they changed on a daily basis that, I suppose they're all memorable in their own ways.
Well, the meets that I remember the most, I didn't hear all of that question perfectly, but, that world indoor record against Randy Matson in 1971, my first breakthrough, I remember it's the thoughts that I had. I remember warming up for that meet, feeling like I could feel every cell in my body. That was the feeling I had. And it was an interesting, unique way of thinking about it that I've never forgotten. And then the day I set the world outdoor record on May 5th, 1973, I remember walking down the field. I had thrown over the world record without a foul the week before in Mount San Antonio in Southern California, a measured throw warming up. And so it gave me a lot of confidence. So I knew walking into this meet in San Jose on May 5th, I had a lot of confidence. And as I walked down the field, I felt like I could count the blades of grass.
Wow.
And so that was another unique feeling. And those are the only two meets of my life that I remember having like a unique thought like that, like feeling all the cells in your body or being able to count the blades of grass.
Wow.
And they're memories to this day.
Yeah. And I think that just shows the sort of real passion that you had for, the sport. I mean, that you actually thought in the moment, and you savoured the moments, because I feel like a lot of people tend to, just sort of don't think about how profound something is at the time. But the fact that you remember that, it's interesting.
Yeah, no. It's interesting to me. It's obviously something that mattered a lot in my life, and it still does. It's really interesting, to be this age now, 77. Unthinkable. It's unthinkable, but it's like that shot putting era in my life was just so fantastic, and I still remember a whole lot. Yeah. Every once in a while, people remind me of things that I don't remember, and I'm always surprised, because I do remember so much of it,
Yeah.
I guess because it was really obviously because it was so important. So.
Yeah. I mean, I forget things all the time. My friends tell me things, and I think I can't remember that. And I'm only 25, so I think we all do it.
Yeah. Well, me too. Yeah. I don't remember everything either, but obviously those were premier moments.
Yeah.
In.
And was it 1980 that you and Mac started the Two Big Guys Mountain Games? Was it something that had been in the back of your mind for a few years before that, or was it very much?
Yeah.
Go on.
Yeah, well, actually, I think I mean, I'd have to say that my decision to buy a place up here in the Santa Cruz Mountains, where I wasn't really familiar, but it was, these are the hills above San Jose and what's become Silicon Valley, and I used to look up at these hills, the redwood forests, but I just decided I didn't want to step out of my car on the asphalt anymore. And so I came up here with a realtor and I bought this. I was looking for a place where I could find a shot put area,
right,
and have a weight room. And so there was a muddy carport that I knew I could make into a weight room. And there was a backyard, it's very hilly and steep in these parts, but I could see where I could level that out to have a shot put area. So I chose this place. And then when I invited Mac to live here, of course, we had a lot of nights, where we would sit around by the fireplace and talk about the state of track and field, the state of throwing, and the fact that throwing does not, we had conversations about this. How can you highlight the throwing events more? How come they're always off to the side? And we came up with this idea to hold our own meet and to have it officially sanctioned. We found out you had to have 3 events, and so we had 4. We had men's and women's shot and discus. And we got sanctioned by what was then the AAU in the U.S. And we started, we were both Nike athletes at that time on Athletics West. So that was the right place to be because Nike was an up-and-coming company. And they agreed to sponsor the meet. And so, we started, calling and reaching out to people. And we found out, and so we got, in that very first Mountain Games, it was on April 28th, 1979. And Perry O'Brien agreed to come, Bill Nieder, Neil Steinhauer, a host of others, some meet directors, and, we got athletes from Finland. The first champions were Rayo Ståhlberg and Marko Tuokko from Finland, and the top American women were the first women's champions. Right. But it just turned into this sort of incredible event. And the discus was at a local high school down the hill, and then by invitation only, the shot put event was right here in my backyard on the hillside, and I think we probably had between 100 and 200 people. I don't know exactly now, but I can't even believe we did it because we didn't have insurance. We didn't. Nowadays, you wouldn't even dream of doing something like that.
No, definitely not.
So,
yeah.
Anyway, that was the first of 3. Yeah. And we took a little break during the we had another event in April of 1980. April 27th, 1980 was the second Mountain Games, and then, because of the Olympic boycott year for the U.S. athletes, at least for us, we just didn't have our heart in it in 81, but then we revived it again in 1982 and had an incredible third Mountain Games.
Yeah. Just
incredible. Discus throwing especially, every single gold medalist, I think from 1956 through, now I'm forgetting exactly, but through at least 1980. Well, I'd have to look that up. I don't want to be inaccurate. But
no, I think that's
quite a lineup.
I think that might be the one that I've seen on YouTube, and I think it was, obviously Al Orta would have been the 56, 60, 64, 68 champion, wouldn't he? And then obviously Mac and everyone else, and Louis Delis as well. I think I saw on there. But it must have been incredible to sort of get all those athletes together and just,
Yeah.
You know, and
Yeah.
from the shot, you know, the shot perspective, I think the one I saw, I think Dave Lout won the final competition.
Um, what's that? Who? Well, in discus, you mean,
In the
or
shot,
no?
sorry, in the shot, Dave Lout.
Oh, oh yeah, yeah. Well, I think Dave Lout must have won the '82 edition
Right.
over Brian Oldfield. Yeah. And I know one year we allowed Brian Oldfield to throw when he was pro because they weren't letting him throw anywhere else, or maybe because he'd been a pro and he hadn't been reinstated yet. And so we said, oh, we called it an exhibition,
Yeah.
you know, but that might have been that year.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And you mentioned the Olympics, so obviously the boycott in 1980. You know, was that something? Obviously, it was disappointing to have that sort of opportunity robbed from you, but also, I guess the moral side of it as well was kind of bittersweet, I guess. And how did you feel at the time about it?
Well, I was totally opposed to boycotting. You know, I made the Olympic team. I was in great shape. I'd had, two, close calls with, the top medal. You know, I was fourth in Montreal. Things got kind of drugged down there, but, I don't know, they turned a little flat, but for everyone really. But so 1980, I had my best standing throw ever at the Olympic trials and threw 21 meters, 69 feet, and made my third Olympic team. And then the government, which didn't have anything to do with track and field, never supported anyone, not even a dime, not a penny. They decided, they concocted something where they somehow claimed the authority to prevent us from going. And I was opposed to that the whole time. I thought we should have been there competing, waving the flag, whatever. Just and also not to burn bridges to peace. There were so few. Sports was one. So I wasn't actively involved, but somebody added my name to a lawsuit against the U.S. government, and that got thrown out almost immediately as small groups of people, somehow might have to suffer more than them, something about the greater good, And so then the White House invited everyone. Everyone was invited to the White House. And you could bring, a father, a mother, a wife, whatever. And I was one of the only people that refused the trip, and everybody had a great time. And I don't begrudge anyone for doing that. It just didn't make any sense to me.
No.
To accept, I guess it was that important to me that I felt we should have been there.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's interesting, and I guess the thought process behind sort of getting everybody to the White House was like, you might not have got to compete, but at least you got to meet the president, I guess. But like you say, the athletics outweigh anything. You wanted to compete because it's what you loved and it's what you trained for, and that the consolation prize just, I guess, for you maybe at the time just didn't seem, fair.
Well. They were the people that took the chance to go to Moscow away.
Yeah.
And so I just didn't. It didn't make sense to me. And like I said, I've never begrudged anyone who went because I know people had a good time, and I'm sure they felt proud, and it just didn't ring a bell with me.
Yeah.
That was the right. It didn't seem like the right thing to do.
Yeah.
And so I don't regret my decision at all.
That's good. And was it at around that sort of time where you started to realise, I guess obviously you were still competing for a few years after that, but at what point did you start to sort of feel the winding down a little bit and realising that, from a competitive standpoint that, you know, you were going to withdraw yourself a little bit from competing, or, you know, you know, obviously I haven't been through that, so I don't know how it works when you realise that, you know, you don't want to compete anymore. But yeah, when was that? When did that start to come into your head?
Well, it would have been. It's true that, you know, that started happening, probably very slowly, and I wasn't recognizing it yet. You know, 81 I still went to Europe and competed and still won some big meets. 82, I was still competing, and I think competed on a U.S. team meet in the U.S. and then and still went to Europe. 83, and this is a good point. I'm not even remembering those years quite as well, but I was still with Athletics West, so there was a lot of support. In that Nike was more supportive than anything I'd had before. But no, I think 83 would be my last year, even though in 84, the Los Angeles Olympics, that was my goal, was to go to a fourth Olympics. To be on a fourth Olympic team. And my mind said go, but my body said no. It was the first time in all those years of competing that I was starting to, I think I pulled a calf muscle early in the year, then I pulled a pec, and I'd never had those kinds of things happen before. Right. And then when I felt my rib cage straining to the point where, you know, I didn't feel like I could torque into the throw, and then of course you can't throw the shot without torquing. And so I retired 1 month before the Olympic trials. I just made the decision that I knew I couldn't push it at that point. I felt depressed for about 1 day. And then I realized, hey, man, I had the greatest time, the greatest career, and I moved on, you know. I felt really good about everything after about 24 hours.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and then did you continue to throw at all, or did you just put it down and not pick it back up? You know, did you just do it in your spare time as a hobby, or did you just become so busy with other things that you closed that chapter?
No, I mean, I almost immediately, I kept lifting weights, but not with the same, fervor to set PRs or anything like that, or PBs, but, I started running more. Right. And then it wasn't too long after that Mac and I started doing clinics, or I would do clinics, and so I was involved in the sport yet. And sometimes some of these clinics were huge, like Mac Wilkins and I showed up in Michigan for a for a track clinic, and there were like 300 kids or more just for shot and discus. Wow. And we looked at each other going, how are we going to individually train 300 athletes? Yeah. But, we found a way to do it in groups. And, and we had a lot of successful clinics, and not just we, but also me individually. I would get, asked to do them as well. And so I was involved for a few more years.
Yeah.
But, my wife had asked me to be a boom man for her. She was a sound recordist, and she traveled around the world to events. And, because I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. And so once I started getting busy in sound recording, I realized that if I say yes to a track clinic, 2 months down the road, and they're relying on me to be there, and all of a sudden I have to turn down a 10-day job traveling somewhere to do sound recording, it started to not make sense to me. And so it didn't take too long where I made the decision that I wouldn't be able to say yes to and just to concentrate on my career, which was, it's like what I'd learned in athletics.
Yeah.
How to focus, and it became very similar, even though it's a whole different world.
Yeah,
and it's funny that just one thought. It is funny that when I retired from shot putting, in that 24-hour period, when I was a little depressed, I went, well, at least I won't have to travel so much anymore. And I ended up traveling way more in sound recording.
Yeah, I bet. And you worked for NFL Films, was it, among other companies, I suppose?
Yes. Yeah, they would be one of the two, CBS News and 60 Minutes were really important client of really important stories that I worked on over the years. But NFL Films was the other one that was just an honor to work with, kind of the best in the sports business, the best production in the sports business. I worked with NFL Films from first day to last over a 30-year period, but mainly the last, about 22 years up until about 2018 is when I last worked with NFL Films.
Right.
And, did 20 Super Bowls, 22 overall, counting two with CBS Sports before that.
Wow.
Did games every Sunday somewhere in the U.S., flying all the time. And also with CBS 60 Minutes, there was a 5-year period when I worked exclusively for them. I mean, as a freelancer with a cameraman, and we went everywhere from Somalia and Iraq, Bosnia, 3 trips to Vietnam, doing stories about, incredible stories about the war. Spent a month there during the 20-year anniversary of the fall of Saigon. Worked for Discovery Channel, all over Europe, Israel, Poland. The year they turned, the year after they were after Solidarity, when they became a free country. And working with their militaries. It was called World of Valor, Elite Fighting Forces.
Right.
6.5-week trip when my son was about 3 years old. Really, really hard to go away in those days. But yeah, so that sort of took me away from. The career became so sort of fulfilling, or at least something that I dedicated myself to. And so I never lost my love for throwing and track and field. It's just that it was hard to be involved. At that point.
I guess being on the road so much, it was just, apart from being tired, and it must have been hard to even think about it, let alone try and do it. So, yeah, that makes sense.
In 1985, I believe. No, I'm sorry. Oh man, I can't believe I can't remember the year, but 2007, I got a call here in Santa Cruz, from Santa Cruz, just down the hill, that they had this coach said, "Hey, I can't believe you live right here." He said, "I've got this girl shot putter," and I said, "Oh, coach, you know what? I get these last minute calls, and I don't think I want to, start helping someone, and then I have to rush off to a job." And he said, "No, you got to meet her. You got to meet her." And so I went down and I met Julie Dufresne, and she was so easygoing. She was a surfer gal and really strong, and she threw like 43 feet standing, or 42 feet, and I said, "Well, look, I could possibly coach you, but I said, I can't guarantee I'm going to be here tomorrow or next week. And she goes, that's okay. No problem. And so that's the one time I coached, and I coached with her. Well, I worked with her for 3 months, and she improved 8 feet to 50 feet, 10, and won the California State Championships. And it was really a great feeling. But I realized that, and all I did is because I would go off on jobs, and then we would email, and my only approach was just to kind of be like having guardrails on the outside, and just kind of nudge her in the right direction because she was so talented. But I don't know why I brought that up, but that was my other connection with the world of throwing.
Yeah. And do you think now that you've obviously retired, is it something that you're interested in doing, or are you just kind of happy to let that, if somebody came to you and said, you might think about it, but otherwise you're not, because I was coached for a few months back. I was coached by Mac. I know obviously he's still active coaching. I had a few sessions with him, and I just wondered if it's something that's in you thought about it, or if you're just happy now being retired and not having to travel anywhere.
Well, I thought about it very thoroughly back then, and since then, that was a great experience doing that. But I pretty much realized I know myself pretty well, and I was willing to do anything. I mean, if I had an injury, I would work around the injury, and I would still get a lot accomplished that day. And I sort of realized at some point that I don't think I can push others the way I pushed myself.
Right.
And I think a coach has to have a different point of view, And I recognized that about myself. And then the other thing was that when it comes to shot putting, I was kind of a perfectionist, about, trying to think of everything, technically and whatever, to improve. And I think I would have driven myself crazy if I ever had to coach like a team.
Yeah.
I don't know how I could have handled, I'm just reflecting on myself, my characteristics. And so it's an attractive thought, but I just didn't think I was cut out, to do that.
Yeah.
It's not a selfish thing at all. It's really it was a great experience those 3 months, but I never took it farther than that.
No.
Yeah.
No, I think that's important, isn't it? Is to know if you know yourself and your heart's not necessarily in that, then why do it? And it's interesting. And in terms of the sort of modern, athletics, do you keep up with the shot much? I mean, I'm sure you probably do, but or is it just something that's kind of in your periphery now?
No, I keep up as much as I can. I threw against Mitch Krauser, Ryan Krauser's father.
Yeah.
Back in the day. And Mac Wilkins used to send me videos of Ryan when he was a high school glider,
right,
throwing 6 to 7 feet. And the thing that was very complimentary from Mac was that he'd say, "Look at Krauser, look at him throw. He uses his hips the way you did." Whatever he said, they were very positive, complimentary things. But so I've had kind of an eye on him since he was a high school thrower because of Mac sending me those things.
Yeah.
And I've watched him progress over the years, and so it's. But I mean, I've never met him. Never met him personally.
Wow.
Joe Kovac, I've watched him throw in meets. Talked to him on the phone, but never met him beyond that, and I don't know if I'll meet those guys someday or not. It'd be great if I did, but who who knows? But I do enjoy. I mean, I'm just amazed at the throwing level, and I know there's throwers around the world that are also really, really tremendous shot putters.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I mean, as always, Team USA, are just so dominant. And, looking at the last Olympics, I don't know if you watched it, but, top three, it would have been all three US athletes if Peyton Otterdale hadn't, had the issues in the rain. There just seems to be something about Americans that you're just, genetically gifted at throwing. And, I don't know what it is. I think the rest of the world is just weak. The UK anyway, in the throwing events. So
I don't know. It's really it is. It's very fascinating because that we have this sport, American football, that takes away a lot of the best, big, strong, explosive athletes, and who could be throwers. And so it is kind of amazing. Or even basketball, there might be some basketball players that could have been shot putters, who knows, or discus throwers. But so I'm not sure, and also the fact that we don't have, track and field has lost a lot of focus in the U.S., and yet we keep, at the top level, we keep producing, world champions. So it's a fascinating thing to me. I can't explain it, really.
And it must be. Do you ever think about? I mean, you seem like quite a humble guy, and I'm sure you don't think of it in that terms. But do you ever think, the part that you've played in that? Because undoubtedly, the film of you throwing, and like you said, Mac comparing you to, the way Krauser throws to you. I mean, it's obvious that there's a connection there, and he's seen your footage, and you have obviously this status within the sport. Does it ever? How do you feel about that?
Yeah, well, I don't really think about that a lot, but I do recognize that. Yeah, I mean, I think there's something to it because maybe people thought I was crazy to care so much about it, but I think when you show that kind of enthusiasm, and then the way the throwers of that era did, it does add importance when other people see that, when young kids growing up see that, and they go, "Wow, this is really something important," and it is. It's I know that. I think in the shot video, we do a thing at the end, Mac and I, where we say that we know that someday somebody watching this will set a new world record and win the Olympic gold medal. And who knows how much influence, what we did back then. It certainly didn't hurt, that we showed that kind of enthusiasm and tried to relay some of that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's sort of undoubtable, really, that if it wasn't for people like yourself and Mac and John and Brian and everybody else from that period, the sport wouldn't be where we are now, and the sort of technique and the understanding of the physics and the training and everything like that. So it's amazing, really.
Yeah, well, thank you for saying that. I mean, I would feel honored, if anyone does feel that way.
And I think a lot of people do, and, including myself. And, I've not got any more questions, and it's just, it's been a real pleasure that you've made yourself available to help me out and to sort of sit down and talk to me about this, because I was saying to my partner, and I said to her, if I was into soccer or something, there's no chance I'd ever get to sit down with Ronaldo or Messi, and it's in my opinion, it's an equivalent, chatting to yourself. So, it's a real pleasure. So, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, if you need anything else, I'm certain I can make time to answer that, or if you need any a photo of Mac and I sitting here in this house or something back in the day or whatever, let me know.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. I mean, I think I don't know, because I've done some digitizing work for, I don't know if you know Gerlof Holkema in Holland.
He mentioned, he mentioned that you were doing some digitizing for him. That's great.
Yeah, and I just wondered if you had any films, not necessarily for me to digitize, but whether you had any kind of home film of that, the Two Big Guys Mountain Games, or any of your training. I guess a lot of it's available on YouTube already, but I just wondered if there was anything like that existed, or photos or anything.
Yeah, maybe. You mean of the Two Big Guys Mountain Games, or
just
other?
Yeah, just in general, that, and from other times in your career. Like I said, I mean, there's a hell of a lot of stuff on YouTube and elsewhere online.
Yeah.
But I just wondered if there was anything that you've, you'd be happy to share. Obviously, you don't have to, but
yeah, let me. I do have some footage of the mountain games. I'm just not sure if the best stuff was put in, the tape that Nike made, or but I can try to look. I have a little GoPro reader, that I can kind of sort through it. Let me check.
And no rush, obviously. If it's something that it just I was just interested if you did have any, but no problems. I have. Yeah, I do have some stuff, but let me think about that. And it's really great that you're doing that, because I know that he does a real service for throwers from our era, to put so much information out on Facebook. I only do Facebook. I just decided not to do all the social medias. It's bad enough, just to have to wade through the stuff on Facebook to get to the throwing and friends and family, Yeah.
But let me think about that, Tom.
Yeah, no worries. And if there's anything that I can send you as a thank you for taking the time, then let me know, because I feel like
Oh no, I appreciate your interest, and it was really great talking to you, and it's good to get to know you a little bit too, because I was kind of busy with my career for all these years, and now that's a thing of the past, I can enjoy expanding. I've had a couple of really great meetings recently with a bunch of track and field athletes, and it's kind of nice to be back doing that as well.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I bet.
Yeah.
And if I'm ever out in the States, then I owe you a beer.
Okay, all right. That I will accept.
Brilliant.
Absolutely.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Okay. Then.
All right.
Thanks for your time. Thanks again. Much appreciated.
Yeah, Tom. Thank you. It was great talking to you. Yeah.
Brilliant. Speak soon. Cheers.
All right. Yep. Cheers.
Cheers. Bye.